Good morning. Welcome to the bloodredliverpool.com morning digest transfer daily, long title there. I'm joined by Dave Comerford, and we are understandably going to be talking a little bit about Darwin Nunez, the subject that's obviously on the minds of every Liverpool supporter at the moment, and understandably so, as it looks like the Reds are set to complete this deal, which is obviously very exciting, looking forward. At this point, obviously it isn't completed, but it looks like Liverpool are very serious about it, and they're preparing to negotiate for the Uruguayan, who scored both home and away against Liverpool this season, one of only 3 players who did that. So, Dave, how do you think everything's shaping up? What do you think? How do you think it's going to unfold from here? And what do you think is a sort of fair price to pay for him?
Well, it seems from what we're reading, like it hopefully won't be too long before a deal is actually agreed. All the noises kind of last night from kind of the respected sources were that Liverpool were kind of increasingly confident of reaching an agreement. So we know really based on the past few years that once a serious Liverpool rumour actually emerges, a lot of the time the deal's kind of announced within 48 hours and effectively completed maybe, sooner than that. So I'm very confident now that it will happen. And I think, it's Thursday today, isn't it? Potentially something by the end of tomorrow. Hopefully the kind of speed things seem to be going at, but we'll see if the negotiations drag on for whatever reason and whether Benfica accept a package that seems to include a lot of add-ons to get up to their kind of 85 million price tag. In terms of what's fair, it's difficult because I guess it stems from the league that he's in and not being able to kind of ascertain just how representative that kind of goal tally is. Obviously, he scored in the Champions League as well, and we know he's one of the most highly rated young strikers out there, sort of probably in the group behind Erling Haaland, who's obviously gone to Manchester City. So I think that he's probably worth about 60 to 65 million personally, which is what Liverpool seem like they're going to be paying up front, with then sort of 15, 20 million more coming in add-ons, potentially, depending on the success that he has and things like that. So I think there's probably an element of Sadio Mane's leaving and we want to sort of win these trophies back that we missed out on by such a fine margin last season. So Liverpool are prepared to pay what it takes. And it's rare that they do that, but I think they do it when they know a player is going to sort of be a long-term superstar, really. And that's obviously the confidence they have with Nunez. So, yeah, I personally would say, in an ideal world, wouldn't be going too much higher than sort of 65. But at the same time, if he does live up to even closest potential and you've got him for sort of a decade, then he's going to pay that back, 10 times over, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting. I mean, it's inevitable that comparisons are being made with Haaland, with the Premier League's top 2, both looking to sign a top-class striker this summer. But obviously, Liverpool may have to pay more up front for Nunez than City did for Haaland. But of course, I would imagine he's going to be on a much lower wage, at least initially. So, I think it would be better if transfer deals were sort of reported with the whole package of salary and transfer fee and everything. And they don't tend to be. But I think combining the salary and the transfer fee, Liverpool's deal should cost them a lot less than what City are paying for Haaland altogether. I suppose it's whether he's going to be as successful as everyone assumes that Haaland is going to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously that's the bar that he's probably going to be judged off now, and it's interesting because whilst Haaland is coming from a stronger league in the Bundesliga, we have obviously seen some kind of high-profile exports from that league struggle to maintain their goal scoring. So Timo Werner is obviously a prominent example in the Premier League, and I think Luka Jovic as well when he went from Frankfurt to Real Madrid. So there's no sort of guarantee that they're going to be putting up kind of 30-plus numbers. And I think there is going to be a drop-off to kind of more what we'd look at as a Premier League standard, really, in terms of goal scoring, because it's kind of rare that we see people break the 30 mark in this league. So, yeah, I think the fascinating thing with Nunez and Haaland. I mean, there's two things really. First of all, and you alluded to it there, obviously both teams really shelling out on a top striker. Having, City, obviously it was well documented that they played with kind of a fluid formation without any real number 9 last season. And Liverpool have had more of a focal point probably, but they've never really had kind of the out-and-out option. It's always kind of been a winger doing the job, or obviously Firmino as a centre-forward false 9. So now both teams are going to be playing with a player who is just a straight-up number 9. So that's interesting from kind of a tactical evolution standpoint. But I also think that given the two players are so young, it almost sort of sets the scene for a long-term rivalry, a rivalry that could last the best part of 10 years, depending on what happens. If these two teams can, stay in the equation for titles for that period, then it is going to be one of the narratives, I think, is sort of Haaland against Nunez. So it's interesting, really, because I was thinking about it yesterday, watching something about Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira, that obviously the rivalry between Liverpool and Man City is amazing, but has it had that kind of individual battle elements of it? I'm not so sure that it has up to this point. So maybe that's a new feature of the rivalry that we could say if the Nunez signing gets done.
Yeah, I suppose the closest thing has been between sort of Guardiola and Klopp themselves rather than sort of players on the pitch. But as you say, clearly if both teams are spending sort of north of 60 million on a striker this summer, which could change the way that both teams play to some extent, then clearly there's going to be a sort of, especially online between fans of both clubs, but, sort of competition of, well, our guy scored more goals, well, our guy got more assists, or all these sorts of things. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be the only change for the Liverpool front line, assuming the deal does happen. There's also obviously the Sadio Mane stuff going on at the moment. Bayern have come back with a second bid, which once again has been rejected. It seems to me that I imagine the deal will get done eventually, but obviously Liverpool are holding out for as much money as they can get, possibly looking to use Bayern's valuation of Lewandowski as a sort of reference point for the deal. I did a thing the other day for the Echo about how much Mane should be worth. And, there are examples of players with 1 year left on their deal going for about 90 million. That's what Hazard did not so long ago. Obviously, Mane is a year or two, I forget, older than him. And we've had the pandemic and obviously, clubs have made losses and stuff like that. But what do you think would be sort of fair for Mane, or what do you think, Liverpool might sort of be happy to sell for?
I mean, it's very interesting what you say there about sort of Hazard and other players who've kind of fit into that really high price bracket despite the contract situation. The thing with Mane is that he probably is the best sort of left winger in the world, really. And obviously, he's playing centre forward later in the season, but that really kind of only enhances his value because there were questions being asked about his longevity before that and whether he'd passed his peak, and now he looks like he can kind of extend it in a new position. So yeah, I think Liverpool's demands, from what I've read, are sort of like 42.5 million, that kind of territory, which I think works out about 50 million euros. And that's really, when I heard the rumour, I was like, I wouldn't want to be selling for anything less than that. Whereas Liverpool have, what you could almost argue they should have demanded more than that, really, based on the form Mane was showing in the second half of last season. But I agree with you insofar as I think the deal will get done, and that probably means that Liverpool compromise on that price tag and get an amount which isn't really ideal. To be honest, I think that the reason I'm so confident that he'll go, unfortunately, is he's already seemingly agreed personal terms with Bayern. His heart seems to be set on it. I think he wants to be their biggest star, something he hasn't had at Liverpool. And he sees the opportunity there with Lewandowski leaving to take on that mantle. So I think will be an element there of loyalty to the player as well, given that he has been such a brilliant servant to Liverpool and someone who's never really created any issues. So obviously he's not going to do anything sort of damaging in terms of pushing for the move. But I think eventually Liverpool will relent and they'll probably agree to a deal which ultimately could get close to that 40 million figure. But I think quite a lot of it will be add-ons. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something kind of 33 range with about 7 million add-ons, something like that, which isn't perfect. But like I say, I think there'll be an element of ultimately not standing in Mane's way.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And obviously, if they can get something around that sort of figure for him, and there's obviously talk that Minamino is going to leave for about 17 million. I mean, it wouldn't cover the Nunez fee, certainly, but it would be a significant chunk towards it if they sold those two players for a combined sort of 50 million or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that would be good business from Minamino, and it would be continuing the trend, wouldn't it, with Liverpool of almost not entirely financing your business, but financing a large chunk of it through player sales. And I think that's something that people will have to appreciate, because obviously there's going to be a narrative now of Liverpool have complained about Man City's resources for so long, and now they're spending so much on a striker, more than City are spending on Haaland. But I think the key context there is Mane's going. We're getting decent chunk of money for Mane, and you got Minamino seemingly leaving for the best part of 20 million as well. And like you say, that covers a large amount of it. So yeah, hopefully that narrative doesn't have many legs.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably will, though. But that should do us for today. I know both Dave and I have probably got to go and write several articles about Nunez, which will all be on liverpool.com at some point in the next couple of days. Hopefully the deal gets done, and then we'll have all the sort of analysis and content you need to learn about him if you're not too familiar. So thanks to Dave for joining me. And we'll have some articles up for you in due course.